In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Brethren in Christ, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
This is Timothy Flanders with the Meaning of Catholic. This is the Terror of Demons morning show, reclaiming traditional Catholic masculinity. I'm joined as always by co-host Kennedy Hall. How you doing, brother?
Wonderful. Enjoying the snowy Canadian weather around Christmas time.
Yeah, when did y'all's snow fall?
We had tons on Christmas Day and Christmas Eve.
Oh, magical.
It was like, I don't know, half a foot Christmas Eve. And like another half a foot to a foot Christmas Day. So the whole place was like a marshmallow. What's that old song? Marshmallow Land in the Winter or something? Marshmallow World. Outside it was quite fluffy and white. So we went tobogganing on Boxing Day and all that. So it was pretty pretty stereotypical Canadian weather.
That's great. Tobogganing.
Yeah, tobogganing on Boxing Day. Yeah.
So what did you do for Christmas Day? Y'all are locked down. What did you guys end up doing?
Well, so we actually our benevolent dictators allowed us to go to lockdown on the 26th.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anyway, so we had Christmas Eve Mass. We went to midnight Mass, which was, that was a miracle. I didn't think we were going to get there. About 3 weeks ago. Well, some places didn't have it though. So Toronto, we have these colors, like these zones of Ontario are in different colors. Gray zone is like you're on basically lockdown. Red zone, you're close. Orange, I mean, it's all these colors. We were in orange. Anyway, we won't go into the coronavirus because oh my goodness, it drives me crazy. Nobody is sick around here. The hospital is completely empty. I've been in it, so I know. Anyway, but so our county is fine, but they decided Ontario is like, I've never been to New York. I mean, I've been to Buffalo, but I imagine how people in New York State, like there's like New York City and then everybody else. It's like a different,
right.
Might as well be its own country. I mean, people in Syracuse are probably like, why do I always have to deal with those people in New York City, like with their politics and things? It's same for us in Ontario. So Toronto is the People's Republic of Toronto, and then the rest of us have to bow down. So anyway, we're on a lockdown because of Toronto. And so we got to midnight Mass, and I was, but Toronto did not. They were already locked down, a couple cities. So I know our priests, like, there's chapels within an hour or two driving distance outside of Toronto. I think a lot of people tried to get to those. So anyway, we had it. It was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. I honestly, it was somber because it was like we're at Mass, and obviously it's the beginning of the season. It's the beginning of the Christmas season for us. So there's a sort of, I guess, the joy and an expectation of how things are just getting started. But at the same time, it's kind of like the night before your execution. It's like your last meal. It's like, we're going to go to Mass and it's going to be wonderful. And then, I mean, they say it's going to be 28 days, but they said it was going to be 2 weeks last time. So I bet you we won't have Mass for 3 months. In a real, I mean, you can have 10-person masses, and our priests will still get us the sacraments. They do as much as they possibly can, and then we're in a much better situation than anyone who's dealing with your average diocesan situation. However, the restrictions are like the fines are so severe. I mean, there was a guy in Windsor, has like a Protestant group or something, and they've defied the orders and whatever. But the thing is, they send the cops the next day to not let you into your church. You know, it's not like there's no property rights in Canadian Constitution. So in the States, you can just keep showing up. They might keep fining you, and then you can decide to fight those because they're unlawful. But you can't even get into your place. Like they'll literally seize it, and the cops will be standing there. So people are trying, and there are court dates coming eventually, but it'll take months. So anyway, it's a whole mess. So basically, the only solution would be if the bishops would just do something, but they won't. They're in the pocket of the government here. So they won't. If they all said we're staying open, they'd be open. Or if all Christian groups of some sort would just say we're all going to go to church tomorrow, there would be too many for them. But that would be something where you'd have to expect people to take a risk and things, and a lot of people won't do that. So anyway, long story long, we had a wonderful Christmas Mass. We were able to have family gathering on Christmas because it wasn't the 26th. And then now we're in lockdown. But nobody's listening to it now this second time. I've just noticed in the neighborhood, like nobody's doing it. They're over it. Even normal people that kind of take coronavirus pretty seriously, they're just like, you know, we've been open for so long. I know who I'm seeing. People are just kind of rationalizing that this is dumb. So we'll see how long it lasts.
So nobody's taking it seriously except for your bishops?
Well, people are taking it seriously in like a public sense where like the stores are closed, you know, Walmart's open. This is the funny thing. I can go into Walmart without a mask on because they don't enforce it because there's exemptions and they don't ask who has exemptions. But the bishops for the London diocese, which is like the major in southwestern Ontario, that diocese is all the way from, like, goes to Windsor, which is near Detroit, all the way up to past where I live. But I mean, it's like a 3-hour drive to either side of the diocese. That diocese has decided that there's no mass right now. They're going to require people who want to go to mass without a mask on, they're going to require them to have proof from their doctor of exemption. That's not even the law. That's just their decision.
Wow.
And but the thing is, I know some people who, you know, they go to a diocesan parish and they don't want to wear a mask, and they haven't been. And up to this point, what they've been doing is they've been basically quarantining you off in a section on your own. So you sit up in the rafters with all the lepers, which is so dumb. If you think about the logic of the mask, they'd probably want you to be around people who had the masks on because they were protected because they work, right? But instead they sit you all together so you can just fog and waft your coronavirus spores onto each other with no mask on. So one of my friends, they went to the doctor and they asked, they had an actual, I don't know, lung something or other. And the doctor said, there is no note. Like, we don't know what you're talking about. There's no coronavirus exemption mask note. What is the point of the exemptions is like, it's up to the person because they have a health thing. Like, you don't ask. That's the point. Because some people have psychological reasons, right? Like they have PTSD or something and can't, you know, or some kids have sensory disorders or something. The point is you don't ask for the exemption. So it's very strange. So you can go into Walmart without a mask on. But across the street, we have this massive big box store called Canadian Tire. It's like a hardware store. It's closed because they don't sell food. So Walmart, they sell everything Walmart sells, but they don't sell food. So they're closed. But Walmart's open because they have groceries. It's just so ridiculous. And then churches, 10-person mass, whatever. So living in the Twilight Zone.
Oh, once again, yes. Our shout out to everyone who's gone back into lockdown. I have not kept track of the shifting regulations in my own area. I'm blessed to be able to work at home, so I don't actually go out of my house very often, in fact, except to go to mass. So we were blessed to, my wife and I we took the kids actually to the Christmas mass at dawn. Oh. There are, for viewers, if you don't know, there's 3 different masses. There's particular feasts. I think it's just on Christmas and it's actually Christmas, Easter, and Pentecost, I believe, are the only feasts that actually have distinctive masses, right. And they're multiple masses. Right. And so Christmas has the Mass of the Angels, midnight mass, the Mass of the Shepherds, which is mass at dawn, and there's mass during the day, which is the Mass of the Kings. And it was very great. It was at 7 a.m., so it was really dark out, Christmas lights. It was a wonderful mass, just a low mass on Christmas Day, very quiet. My kids were sleepy, so they were pretty quiet and well behaved. So it was a great Christmas mass. I'd never been to that mass, so wonderful. We have this week. There's so many great feasts in the 12 days of Christmas. I wanted to talk about Saint Stephen, but this week we have today is Saint Thomas Becket, and we'll talk about him, why he's important. He's awesome. And we also have the January 1st, which is 3 different things to my knowledge, which is the circumcision of the Lord, which is the first shedding of his precious blood. Mm-hmm. There's the holy name of Jesus as well, because it's the naming of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And it's also a Marian feast, actually, in the office itself and in the collect of the feast. It's a Marian feast with celebrating Mary, who gave us the Lord. And it's a holy day of obligation in America. I don't know if it's the same for y'all. I know that you're on lockdown, but yes. So wonderful feast day. I wanted to mention Saint Stephen because Saint Stephen is such a marvelous feast day, and I think it's one of the most important things for us to keep in mind as Catholics who are Orthodox, striving for the faith. The collect for Saint Stephen says this: "Grant us, we beseech thee, O Lord, so to imitate what we revere, that we may learn to love even our enemies. For we celebrate the heavenly birthday of him who knew how to pray for his very persecutors, to our Lord Jesus Christ, thy Son." So Saint Stephen perfectly imitates Christ as the first martyr, imitating Christ, because Christ, as you all know, was crucified, and he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Right. And Saint Stephen was stoned by the Jews, and he said, "Lay not this sin to their charge." He forgave his enemies. I think this is one of the most important lessons in our day, because there's so much rancor on the internet. And especially when we talk about the Jews, in fact, we talk about the machinations. This is something that we've been covering elsewhere on this channel, is talking about the machinations of Jews, whether that's in the early days or now. And I get a lot of comments where people are just kind of going off on the Jews, and they're lacking this fundamental charity of forgiving our enemies. This is the distinctive feature of Christianity, which makes it very different than Mohammedanism, makes it very different than Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism. I was just reading the article on the Jewish virtue of hate of a rabbi in First Things. He wrote an article called "The Jewish Virtue of Hate" and how we are to hate our enemies. This is contrary to our Lord Jesus Christ. We are to love our enemies, pray for our persecutors. This is what makes our way different. This is what makes the cross different. And we consider Saint John, who says, "He who loveth not knoweth not God, because God is charity. He who says, I love God, and hates his brother is a liar." Yeah. And this is so important, and this is something that we lack so much, especially in the internet, where you can just say whatever you want. Say whatever you want, no consequences. Well, the consequences are coming on Judgment Day, because our Lord says every careless word will receive an answer on Judgment Day. And so you can talk all you want, but when you hate your brother, even your enemy, even the person who's persecuting you, even the Jews or Mohammedans or whoever, communists, Masons, all these evil people, we want to convert them all. We wish them good. And this is what St. Stephen teaches us, because he dies. And we need to consider that and really take a look at that, because this type of lack of charity is just disgusting, and it's offensive to Jesus Christ, and it blackens the name of Jesus Christ. What it does. The prophets say the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles on account of you, and that's on us. That's shame on us because of our lack of charity and our lack of forgiving our enemies. This is something that even the heathen will respect. Even the heathen, even the Marxists will respect this type of thing. This is Blessed Miguel Pro. I think of him, and there's so many different examples who these saints are forgiving their enemies who kill them.
Yeah.
And this is the type of thing we need to respond with charity against those who hate us, and we're in a time where a lot of people are hating us. But this is the type of thing we need to man up, take up the cross of suffering, and love our enemies. So, Saint Stephen, any thoughts on that, Kennedy?
Well, it is really remarkable that right after Christmas, you get into all these martyrs. The most joyful Christmas really is. I mean, the anticipation for Christmas really is exciting. And when it comes, it's weird. I was almost nervous for it this year in a sense, maybe because I knew we were going on lockdown, but it's been such a crazy year and Christmas is so joyful that it was almost like waiting for a wedding day or something. It was the anticipation was almost too much to bear. So, but it's funny, you have this insane, unbelievable, joyful event, but then immediately you have sorrow, which I guess just shows you the paradox of what it means to be a Christian, because, Christ is born and it's the best thing ever. And then he has to flee because Herod, we have the Feast of the Holy Innocents and things. And that's, I guess, personified by the martyrs. So I just have put an article out in Fatima Center about how this is very providential for our times, that right after Christmas, we have a series of feasts for various martyrs, St. Stephen and St. Thomas Becket especially, who are persecuted for their faith and persevere in Christian charity, even unto death, which they have because of the incarnation of Christ. So it is a paradoxical reality that Christmas is accompanied by the greatest joy, but at the same time, a willingness to die and still contain charity in your heart for those who persecute you. And St. Thomas Becket is an incredible, and St. Stephen and Thomas Becket are incredible examples, especially Thomas Becket, because, when you read all accounts about him, he was sort of just, he seemed like a man, like he always had his outward piety. He'd go to mass and things because that's just what you did in the 1200s in England. But there was no evidence that he was a holy man at all until he was ordained, and he was ordained quickly, like priest and bishop within a day or two. And, but the office changed him, and he went from being a man that was going to be most likely sort of more of a political ally of the king, who was his friend, to someone who became a great herald of Christ the King and a champion of Christian fortitude and just really holy all of a sudden. So it is a remark. I guess it also shows, like with St. Stephen, I don't know the timing on it. It's not obviously right after Christmas in the chronology of it, but there's something about the fact that the church is born, Christ is resurrected, and almost immediately you have a major persecution, which it just sort of shows the I guess extravagance, or just how magnificent the grace of conversion is, that you can go from not being a Christian, because at that time it's not even a thing, but then it's the grace of becoming a Christian changes you so profoundly that, for one, the world hates you so much. That's one of the weird things about being a Christian, is the world, we realize this over Christmas with just various things. It's amazing. It's amazing how people hate Christians. People don't realize that it's hard for people who are not practicing Catholics to realize how much people viscerally hate you when you're a Catholic. It's weird. You know, it is diabolical. I mean, you'd be talking to somebody and you can almost see their blood pressure rise when you say the name of Jesus. It really is a strange thing. It's more than political hatred. It's more than ideological hatred. It's something like, yeah, it's diabolical. I mean, it's the devil who unfortunately has his dominion over so many poor souls living in a state of mortal sin. And when true Christian things are said, or when you stick to certain Christian principles that go against the grain, people, they actually just hate you. It's kind of pitiable to see. And our world is full of so much of that. I mean, why do people hate Donald Trump so much? He's obviously not a holy man, but I mean, it's because of the fact that Christians latch on. That's one of the main reasons. Christians really latch onto him, and they can't stand that, and it becomes this visceral thing that bubbles up inside of people. And you see that with Saint Stephen, where they just hate him. I mean, you stone a man to death for preaching the fact that the prophecies have been fulfilled. That's insane. I mean, you've got the Hebrews who've been waiting for this for 4,000 years. It finally happens. It doesn't happen the way they think it should happen, and they want to kill the man for it. It's just remarkable. Think about this. How many divisions were there amongst the Jews at the time? The Sadducees, the Pharisees, like we're talking, people don't really realize the theological differences between these groups were astounding. I mean, it was like today. I mean, you might as well, it's like having a Jehovah's Witness versus a Catholic. They were all over the map. Some of them not believing in the supernatural. I mean, these were not just little minor things. There were major differences in what they believed, but they still tolerated each other better than these Christians, than having these Christians around. So, and then with St. Thomas Becket, we transition. Wow, I wrote an article and I sent it to my priests, and what a better example. We couldn't ask for a better example than basically, and maybe we can talk about him, but a bishop who gets into a row with the government and says, the rights of Christ the King supersede the rights of the state. And this was not a time of apostasy. This was a time of pretty good Christian life in the great age of faith, and dies while at church doing his religious duties because he will not leave his church. And wow, I wish our bishops could actually be bishops like him today.
Yeah, so St. Thomas Becket was opposing King Henry II, who was the King of England in the 1100s, who was imposing restrictions on the church, which threatened the liberty of the church to exercise her mission and be free to preach the gospel. There was more technical things, more details, but he got into conflict. He refused to submit to the king, in very much a prefiguring of Saint John Fisher later on in Henry VIII. Henry VIII was one of his very first acts was to suppress the cult of St. Thomas Becket. Yeah. Because he took his name out of the Book of Common Prayer and everything. The Canterbury Tales, even though that book itself has a bunch of nonsense in it, is all about pilgrims going to St. Thomas Becket's tomb. That's the context of that whole story. So it was a massive pilgrimage site in England, in medieval England. And St. Thomas Becket opposes Henry II, and Henry II tries to put the full force of the state behind him to force him to concede the rights of the church. He refuses. He goes into exile. He enlists the support of the Pope. He finally is confronted by the henchmen of the king. Here's from the office of matins, where the knights come to Canterbury to St. Thomas, where he's about to begin Vespers. Yeah. And the story goes this: the clergy hastened to shut the doors on them against these knights who are about to kill St. Thomas. But Thomas opened them with the words, "The church of God is not to be made an armed camp, and I will willingly suffer death for the church of God." Then he said to the soldiers, "I charge you in the name of God that you do no harm to my people." Then he knelt down and committed his cathedral and himself to God, Blessed Mary, Saint Denis, and the other patron saints of the cathedral. Then he offered his sacred head to the stroke of death, with that the same resolute manner with which he had resisted the laws of the wicked king. He died on December 29th in the year of our Lord 1170. Afterwards, he became famed for many miracles and was numbered among the saints by Alexander III. He was canonized 2 years later, a very swift canonization owing to his holiness and miracles. So it's certainly an example of a bishop resisting the intrigues of an impious king. Yeah. Definitely an example. I thought of the introit of the midnight mass, actually, that has it starts off with Psalm 2, the Lord said to me, thou art my son, to say, I begotten thee. And then it says, why have the Gentiles raged and the peoples devised vain things?
It's crazy.
It's the beginning of midnight mass. It's such a powerful beginning because it witnesses to what you're saying. This birth in the flesh of our Lord Jesus Christ is a threat to the powers that be.
Yeah, and it is like, it's such a dichotomy around Christmas time that it's always the hardest time of the year for so many people. It's all, people, suicides are always higher on Christmas time. And, just like this year, this 2020, this godforsaken year, has been just a sort of a shining example of the void of Christ the King and how the world just suffers in travail without Christ as head, because this is the logical extent of what happens in a godless world is everybody loses their bloody mind. That's literally what's happened. It reminds me of Chesterton's Orthodoxy, his book, where he basically says the reason he became a Christian was because he was trying to be sane. He was looking how to be. And even Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, when he was having an interview with Bishop Robert Barron, who I'm obviously no fan of theologically, but he was having an interview and he said being Catholic is about as sane as it gets. And he said that just from a psychological perspective of the virtues and the way the trajectory of understanding life. And he's like, you can't get more sane than that. It's just funny how that works. But it's interesting that Christmas is on the flip side for so many people. It's like you can tell that people have an absence of Christian charity in their heart, and they're celebrating a holiday that it's kind of like they're celebrating a holiday that's about Jesus Christ, but without Christ. And there's this gaping void that causes a sort of a depression. And you see that, and the only way to cure that is to do it the right way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about Exodus 90. And we also want to mention the 12 days of Christmas and family traditions and stuff like that. Exodus 90 starts January 4th.
Is it January 4th this year?
Yes.
Wow.
So I just heard my 4-year-old. I got to go check on my 4-year-old. So Kennedy, can you tell the audience about what is Exodus 90? Why should you do it? What goes into that? I'll be right back.
Sure. No problem. So Exodus 90 is a program. It's a few years old. It was devised to help men mortify, do penance, and sort of take on traditional mortifications and penances that people usually don't. Now, I've done it twice. I think it's good, but the program has grown immensely over the last few years, 2 years or so. And I will give a couple caveats for people that decide to do it. I've done it twice, and I recommend doing it because here's the thing. Sometimes when I talk to some of my traditionally leaning Catholics, and some people will have objections and they'll say, well, why don't we just do the liturgical calendar? If you follow the traditional liturgical calendar, there are tons of fasting days. Lent is supposed to be hard. Advent's supposed to be hard. Isn't that enough? It is enough, traditionally speaking. It is enough, traditionally speaking. However, I will say that because so many of us have discovered Catholicism in the truest sense, we've discovered all the traditions, as adults. Most of us are not raised in that. Most of us that come to tradition just sort of find it along the way. There's a whole or sort of infrastructure of penance and mortification. There's a whole framework that isn't natural to us because we haven't grown up with it. So personally, doing the Exodus 90 for me, and for many men that I've talked to, it was huge because, well, it was an attempt at sort of rebooting your ability to do penance, because it is 90 days, which is a long time. I've done it twice. I don't ever want to do it again because it was good, but it was long. But it was necessary to do a sort of prolonged, in my opinion, it was necessary to do a prolonged penance, because it really did ingrain in me certain habits that I never had growing up because I never did them. So it starts January 4th. Now, I would say, though, when I did it, the first time that I did the Exodus 90, the first time I did it, it was just in a group of 3. So if you're going to do the Exodus 90, one thing you have to be weary of is the men you do it with, or the way that you do it, will make a big difference in how good it is. So the first time that I did it, it was just in a small group, 2 really good friends, intimate thing. And I like that. I like the small group. I did it in a group of 3. I realized the second time that I did it, was asked to do it by a priest friend, and I didn't want to say no. And it was like a group of 10, 12 guys. And to be honest, for me, that was just way too big. I wouldn't want to do the big group in it again. I like the smaller group. And then also, if I can be honest, when I did it, there is a reading plan. You go through, like Bible readings and things, and it's through the book of Exodus, and there's a whole reason for that, because you're getting out of Egypt, and it makes sense. But the readings I found were fine, but I was sort of reading a traditional Bible commentary anyway, so I just kind of did my own readings. So people can decide that. The disciplines, you can see them on the screen there. Basically, you're giving up most things that you find fun. No alcohol, no desserts. You don't eat between meals. Basically anything with sugar in it. No video games. I don't play video games. That wasn't a problem. Basically, you don't use screens for anything superfluous. So if you're at work, you have to use a screen, whatever, but you don't just kind of surf on social media. You have to give up social media. You start doing Wednesdays and Fridays as days of fasting, abstaining from meat. And you eat only 1 full meal. It's sort of the sort of modern way of understanding how fasting works, like the little 2 small meals, whatever. For us, when I did it, we did bread and water on Wednesdays and Fridays, except I would have supper on Friday nights or whatever with the family. So you can kind of decide how you want to do it. A lot of people decide to start intermittent fasting instead, because it's sort of easier. So the point is the fasting. And it's a good program. Now, the only thing is, the cold showers. The cold showers are cold. And they're actually kind of exhilarating. Like it's I'm not going to say I like them, but you do get used to them in a way. And listen, it's 90 days. So one of the risks with this program, if you go into it in a certain way, is you're like, I'm going to basically, Wim Hof, he's that guy who does the cold therapy breathing techniques. He's kind of like one of those extreme cold wilderness guys. He, he'll like jump into like the polar bear swims and the cold water and things. Don't try to do that on your first day, because you'll probably end up not burning out because it's cold, but burning out in a sense. If you have to have like a lukewarm, cool shower to get in, just do that. I mean, the point is that it's uncomfortable. Okay. When they first did the program a few years ago, it said cool or lukewarm showers. And I think people, because it's kind of how we view the speed limit. It says go 50, so you go 65. I think that's why they changed it to cold, because they realize if they just do cold showers, people will do cool showers. It's kind of, people take their little liberties that they're okay with. But if there were guys who I knew who would start the program and they'd have the shower on like full cold, like it's ice pellets coming out of the thing. And they're like, man, I couldn't even get in the shower. It's like, bro, the point is that it's supposed to be uncomfortable and you stink for one. So have a shower, but like, just get in the shower when it's not hot and then just make it cold as you progress in your shower, and you'll eventually get used to it. I am surprised about starting January 4th this year, because Christmastide, even in the new calendar, is supposed to go to January 12th, I thought. So They do have in the Exodus 90, they do say that solemn feast days you can have your cheat day. For cheat days, you're only supposed to have like one thing. So it's not as if, you go and watch a ton of movies, drink a bunch of beer, and have some ice cream and cake all at the same day. You sort of pick one thing. So you have, dessert that day, or you have you watch a movie or something. You pick one thing. If you're married, you have to make sure that your wife is on board, and you have to, and it even says in the Exodus protocol, it says like the married man, like the Exodus man and his bride, it's not your wife's mortification, it's yours. So the first time I did it, my wife was all excited about it, and it was a whole thing and whatever. And so I watched like no TV basically the whole time. But then the second time I did it, we had this family tradition of watching like some old TV shows like at night before bed. Like we'd watch Little House on the Prairie and things like, and it was a thing for our kids and whatever. To be honest, half the time I fell asleep anyway. But I was like, well, I'm not going to tell my kids who are just too little to understand that we're going to stop doing something. We're just going to, so it was just like you had to make these little sacrifices for family time. But you can do that once you've got control of all your other vices. That's the beautiful part about it, is that it's not as if you're staring at your YouTube like from dawn till dusk watching videos of, football highlights, and then you're going to go watch something with your family. Your mind is clear. You've been doing the mortifications. And then when you have these little moments of reprieve, but for family purposes, you feel good about it. I remember the first time I did it when I was teaching a class. I think we watched that movie, Remember the Titans. Like I was showing it in a class for some reason. And I hadn't watched a movie in like a month and a half or 2 months. And the movie was on, and I was doing some marking, but I looked at the projector and stuff, and I was like, wow, movies are amazing. I couldn't believe how amazing a movie was. A friend of my buddy too that I was doing it with, he was, you're only supposed to listen to music that sort of lifts your soul to God. So whatever that is. I mean, it doesn't have to be just chant or something classical. Some people like listening to praise and worship. That's up to them, I guess. But he was driving around, and like his baby was crying. So he's like, I'm just going to turn on the radio. And it was just some stupid pop station or something. It was just some noise for the baby. But he told us, he's like, wow, music is amazing. Like he wasn't listening to much music at all. And just this dumb pop song, but it had like a melody to it. So you really do start to appreciate things. So I think it's great. Some of my, I said, like I was saying when you were gone, some of my, particularly rad-tratted friends will say, why don't you just do the liturgical calendar? I get that. But because the liturgical calendar does have tons of fasting in it and stuff. But most of us have never really done that. And the nice thing about this program is that it's like a boot camp. You do it and you learn. And I did that. I don't think I'll ever do the program again because I've already done it twice. But I will tell you, though, that particularly for me, the fasting and the abstaining from media, doing it for those 3 months really reprogrammed me. So it's like when I want to, so for Advent, I took on fasting and I did it. There's no way I would have been able to fast the way that I did this. I did the Martinmas Advent, like the St. Martin's Lent or Advent. There's no way I would have been able to do that so well, in my opinion, for me, if I hadn't have done this extensive thing over the last couple of years, because it was like riding a bike, getting back into it. So I think that I think it's really good. But if you follow the traditional calendar, because this one uses the new calendar, I think, for the most part. But if you follow the traditional calendar, there's more feast days. So I did that.
Yeah. The Septuagesima this year is January 31st.
Mm-hmm.
So Septuagesima is the third Sunday before Ash Wednesday.
Yeah.
So this is the pre-Lent. So Lent is already coming, my friends.
I know, it's always right there.
So, but I think that I've never done this program myself. I'm just very very much a loner in terms of spiritual practice. I don't really like doing group stuff, but I think it's very good. It seems to be very good, especially if you are benefited from a group helping hold you accountable to your resolutions. And I think I've mentioned this channel before. I have sort of that group with one other man. I have one other man that I talk to once a week, and COVID's really broken that up a lot. But we have a bond of accountability. So we are striving for being men of God for our children, for our wives, and an accountability. So I think accountability is very important, and it, especially Exodus 90, can be very impactful for men to be held accountable to do some basic things, which I mean, essentially what this is basically living like our fathers did 100 years ago. It's like what this is like. Let's take you out of your technocratic, luxurious idleness for 90 days and see what happens. And this is what our fathers did. They didn't have a bunch of hot showers. They didn't have a bunch of music all the time. They didn't have a bunch of screens. They were doing hard work. This was daily life for them. So I think when you do that, and a lot of these practices have been very, very impactful in my own life. The cold showers are I think that's one of the most difficult things. I mean, fasting is one thing, but cold showers, whew. But the music in particular, this is something that's been a huge impact on my life. Was just cutting out the pop music or popular music or whatever, and just going into either traditional folk music or classical chant. I think it's easy to underestimate the influence of music on your spiritual life. And I definitely found when I cut out all music except for a few kinds, that I could really be a lot more silent in my spiritual life, a lot more present, a lot more able to transition from daily duties to prayers, because something about popular music, and we've talked about it, Kennedy and I, on this channel, popular music is made to be addictive. It's made to get into your intellect and stay there forever. And so when you're trying to focus your intellect on prayer and being attentive and being recollected in God, taking out this music can be very helpful. Absolutely.
Yeah. The music thing's big, getting rid of certain music. And you come to realize, it's kind of like, traditional, there's so much to the faith is our faith is so three-dimensional, so ironically, this program it's not done by traditional Catholics, so-called, although a lot of they give you the program has gotten so big over the last couple of years. The first time I did it was the first time that they did an app. So there is an app, which in some ways defeats. In some ways, you got to be careful because the app does have a chat thing on it, so you can talk to everybody in your group. So one of the things that they always remind you is like, this app isn't replacing your social media, so don't be posting on here 40 times a day. The nice thing about it is that it's one app that you can use, so you're not getting into your texting or Facebook messaging. So it is good because it takes you away from all the trappings of using your phone for other things, and it has the readings on it and all that kind of stuff. But when I talked to the first time I did it, they give you a call after to see how it went. And they said it was getting pretty, like, they kept hearing all these guys were doing it that went to the Latin Mass and and these guys that started it weren't traditional. So it is growing. But it really helps because being a faithful Catholic, like all the way through, there's a three-dimensional element in your life. It has to affect every element of your life. You can't just go to, even if you think you're, trad or whatever, you can't just go to Mass. I go to the SSPX, or I go to the FSSP every Sunday. I'm a trad. It's like, no, that's great. I mean, that's a better liturgy. Don't get me wrong. And that's I'll advocate for that. Everyone knows that, but you have to do everything else in your life as well. You have to actually be living a Christian life. So this is really great because it does make you do that in ways that you never otherwise would. And the support is important. Again, I realized I would never want to do it in a big group again. It's just not me. I don't want to share with, I don't want to get vulnerable around a bunch of dudes. Like,
Kennedy, share your feelings about.
Yeah. But I will, but obviously, you have a good friend. So when you have one or two good friends, that's what you do anyway. It's like the same guys that you have a beer with or smoke a pipe with and just enjoy talking about. Like you always have people that you confide in, and that's important because when you're going through, and you know what I will say though, married men who do the Exodus 90, I've seen it where it causes some friction in the marriage, but kind of good friction in the sense that it kind of really shows you where the priorities are in your marriage and the dynamic you have with your wife, because it's hard. Like, she has to make some sacrifices as well. I mean, obviously you can't make it her mortification, but that doesn't mean that because you guys like to eat chips and watch Netflix every night before bed, that you're just going to do that the whole time. Like, you do have to cut that out. Otherwise there's no point in doing it. So she does have to make some sacrifices. So you find the odd guy, you talk to him and do it. And it was like, it caused a lot of spats in their marriage throughout the time. But in a way it was kind of like, well, it's kind of good you got that to the surface, because in reality, Exodus 90 is not like that hard. It's not like you're being forced to pinch incense to Caesar or something. You're just doing something that's a mortification. So if that's difficult for you guys to go through as a marriage, then that's good you found that out now, because you're going to have harder things as they come. So I've seen that happen as well. I haven't seen anyone. I've seen everyone I've seen do it, I think, got through it. But some people do quit, I guess. So anyway, it's good.
Yeah. And having said that, we would also recommend that you, like you said, talk to your wife about this.
Yes.
Make sure that you are doing this at least with her consent in a way. You don't really want to just go against your wife's wishes for no good reason. You want to see how she feels about it, or get her on board as much as you can. There's no reason to cause friction where there doesn't need to be. But like Kennedy's saying, sometimes you need to say, hey, I really want to do this. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
This is important to me. And this is what I'm going to do. And that's it, And the other thing is, like you said, the importance of confiding in another man. And it doesn't have to be a group share, but I don't mean to knock on sharing one's feelings with another man, because that's important. You got to have a brother where you can kind of share your feelings and be a little vulnerable in the sense that if you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, you don't know how to express or let your feelings guide you properly. If you're just losing your mind or some reason or different things like that, you need to have another man who can be your brother.
Yep.
In a way. So that's very important. And so it's good to have that confiding friend. Very important to have that as a man, I think. Yeah. And then you can, in those difficult times, that will allow you to get more on track so you can be there for your wife.
Yeah.
But this is a really great, a great thing as well. Definitely to think about the wife. So,
you're supposed to have a priest as well. It doesn't have to be in your group, but you're supposed to have like a priest advisor or something. We had a priest in our group, which was good. But I would recommend, like, let's say you can't get a priest to do it. Especially I would be, I bet you most traditional priests won't do it. Because again, well, for one, they've got more going on in some ways, but they're probably already doing a bunch of fasting. It's just more. If you're following the traditional liturgical calendar as a priest, there's just more to it. So that's funny thing too, is a lot of the couple priests I did it were actually Novus Ordo priests, and for them it was like the first time they had ever done something so difficult. Which good. I mean, I'm glad they finally did that. But if I were to ever do it again, which I don't think I will, but if I was and I was going to do it in the situation I am now, I imagine that it would be a few guys from the parish and we would just say, we'd ask Father so-and-so to meet us every 2 weeks or something and have confession, spiritual direction. Like we kind of do something like that, but I think it'd be hard to get them into the group. And I don't think it would be appropriate for how they operate. But you do have to have a priest because, you know, certain things will come up. You'll have changes in your psychology and stuff as you go through certain things. So having a priest around is important.
Right on. Well, real quickly, we wanted to talk about the 12 days of Christmas because it's a great time for the kids, and we were trying to think of share different ways that we're trying to make the time very special for kids, because I think that one of the most important things, in my opinion, for kids before the age of reason is to have these little traditions.
Yes.
Because I think these traditions are really what transmits the faith to them before they can even understand the faith. You know, all they care about is chocolates on the third day of Christmas or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's something that they remember every year and they look forward to. And it's something that sort of ingrains in them the reality of what's really going on in sort of a childlike way.
Yeah.
And so we've basically tried to, we're just building every year to try to figure out how to do all these traditions. Mm-hmm. We're just giving us something very small every day. And they get, you know, extra candies and chocolate milk and all this fun stuff all these extra privileges they don't normally get
right
during the 12 days of Christmas. And I just, something came to me recently. I thought, because, you know, grandma gets him a bunch of toys. He gets some toys for Christmas. And so we've got a ton of toys. And we were thinking that for Epiphany, we can give 3 toys to Jesus, meaning I take both my sons and they have to pick out 3 toy sets or whatever, or a significant sacrifice of toys that they don't use anymore, things they don't have anymore, they don't want anymore, or whatever. And then we're going to give them to the poor.
That's good.
And then with the Epiphany, obviously the 3 kings give the 3 gifts.
Yeah.
And that'll be, I think, a good thing for him to obviously think about the poor, decrease his possessions, so he's not just has too many of these gifts.
Things, yeah.
And that's my idea right now for the 12 days of Christmas, other than just singing the 12 days of Christmas. He loves the 12 days of Christmas song, which we sing all. I think singing, I try to sing a ton with my sons.
Well, that's good.
I think that speaking of music, I think getting the good music in their ears is a great thing. So, Kennedy, what are the whole children doing for 12 days of Christmas?
Well, we're just trying, especially with lockdown, we are just trying to do as many fun things as possible. Just kind of treating it as, I mean, that's the funny thing about celebrations is you just have to celebrate. You know, it's not really that complicated. You just have to do things that are awesome. So there's just certain things we're doing, like every day we'll try to do something fun and try to see somebody that's really fun. And and try to have like my wife is an amazing cook and she's an amazing baker, especially. So there's just new baked goods. So all the weight that I lost during Advent, I'm going to gain back. But there's just tons of things. So it's kind of like, Mom, why are we making peanut butter balls or whatever today? Because it's the 3rd day of Christmas. Okay. And it's just little things like that. And actually, maybe if I can share my screen here. I don't know if I can. I was going to try and share my Chrome tab, this one here. Can you see that?
Oh, I think I have to enable it. Let's see. There we go.
Do you see this calendar thing I have here?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this is something my wife downloaded. You had to buy it. But this is actually all of the days of Christmas. I'll just go down quickly here. So you can see the numbers, right? Like 3, 4, 5. And it has it's actually for this year. So it has the feasts. Okay. And you can see St. Thomas Becket, Holy Innocents, and so forth. Beautiful images. Okay. St. Stephen. This is not in perfect order because what it is, this is actually 4 or 5 pages that you print off and make a poster. And you can see it has all the different things here. So what we have is we have this beautiful, we put this all into a calendar or into a poster. So he continues here all the way to the Epiphany with the 12 days of Christmas. And beautiful pictures you see there with the wise men. And so we downloaded this, and it also has the legend for the 12 days of Christmas. So you get, because I actually have a video up on the Fatima Center. Maybe we can link that for I call it the secret meaning of the 12 days of Christmas. And I go through the history of persecuted English Catholics and why they have the song. So this beautiful calendar is, I'll unshare now. I don't need to, I guess I can keep it up. So this beautiful calendar is, what our kids do every morning now is they're coming downstairs. They'll be downstairs in a couple hours, and they kind of just like run over to the poster and they're like, what day are we on now, Dad? So they follow it, because when you actually print it out and you put the pages on the poster, it goes in order, like sort of, from side to side. And we're right here. And then they see a picture of it, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it literally is beautiful to look at. And so they're following through the 12 days of Christmas that way. And then they'll say, what are we going to do today? And then we just have whatever we're going to do today. So it's just a way of the focal point of their mind is that it's 12 days of Christmas, and they have pictures to show them. And then also, with St. Thomas Becket, right? Like, look at this picture of St. Thomas Becket. I mean, he has a sword in his head. So they're kind of like, Dad, what's with the sword in the head? Okay, well, he was, they get it a little bit. So I was like, he was killed because the government told him that he couldn't it didn't want him to go to church. And they said, is it kind of like now? And I said, yeah, it's kind of like now. So anyway, so that's what we have. I don't know where she got it, but I guess maybe it's too late now, because for people it's already started, but things like that. There's a lot of stuff. My wife finds all these things on Pinterest or Etsy and places like that. She's in these groups with all these Catholic women on social media or whatever. And there's a lot of really great stuff that she found. And that was one of them. So we've been going through that every day. And it's been, it's definitely a tradition we're going to keep every year now. That's
excellent. I just found your video on the 12 days of Christmas, which I just sent to the chat. Where can people find this awesome poster?
Oh man. I don't know off the top of my head. I think she found it in one of those shops. So she actually had to buy it. Like, it was like $10 or something.
Oh, okay.
And buy the download, because some wonderful woman made it. Because it's for this year specifically, because you can see how the feast days work on it. Because Sunday's not going to fall on the same day every year. So that one actually has that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let me know. So was it in person that she bought it then?
No, downloaded it. Like, it was
okay. So
you for the download, and she printed it.
Okay. So ask her where she found it, and then I'll put that on the show notes.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. So thanks for watching. Remember to like, subscribe. You can also buy our books at Our Lady of Victory Press.
Yeah.
Link below. I just released the Introduction to the Holy Bible on audiobook. So you can buy that on audiobook as well. So you just follow the link to Our Lady of Victory Press. You can choose any of the books. There's 2 books by Kennedy, 1 book by me on there, and you can buy the audiobook as well on there. So let's offer up an Our Father again for the children, 12 days of Christmas, that they can continue to know the joy of Christ and Christmas and this insane time that we're living in. And I pray for all the parents that they can all provide something for their kids in this time to offer up for the sake of the children. So let me get my icon here, and we'll offer up an Our Father. Let me see. Oh, it's not. Hold on just a second. Got to move this over to my other screen. All right. Nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Pater noster, qui es in caelis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra.
Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, dimitti nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Amen.
In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen.